Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, March 13th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Since returning to the White House, President Donald Trump has issued numerous orders that have directly affected Americans in different ways.
It's definitely frightening right now to be a part of the trans and non-binary community. We are definitely under attack.
We'll hear more about how policy changes are affecting the trans community in the Central Valley. But first, these news headlines. Health officials revealed more details about a measles case identified in Fresno County. As KVPR's Joshua Yeager reports, the patient attended a faith-based convention in nearby Madera County while infectious.
Health officials from both counties say they are now working to trace the patient's contacts and prevent a full-blown outbreak. In a press conference, they did not reveal which convention the patient attended, but said it took place on March 2nd. Dr. Simon Paul is Madera County's health officer. He says the patient had not been vaccinated and caught the virus while traveling abroad.
If you're going to be traveling, that's a really good time to make sure you are vaccinated. And especially if you're traveling with infants, you may not realize that if they're 11, 12 months old, they still are not vaccinated for measles.
Measles is highly contagious, but the risk to the general public is low. That's because a childhood vaccine required by most public schools is extremely effective at preventing measles infections. Officials say this is Fresno's first measles case since 2023, and it comes amid a surge in outbreaks across the U.S. and globally. For KVPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager.
A Valley School District superintendent has been removed from her position. The board of Central Unified School District in West Fresno announced it's parted ways with Ketty Davis. A district spokesperson said they've reached a, quote, separation agreement with Davis. However, the spokesperson gave no details about why they're seeking new leadership. Davis served as superintendent for 2 years at the end of a 3-decade career with Central Unified. The school board will appoint an interim superintendent in the meantime. Visalia's top cop has been chosen to lead the California Police Chiefs Association. City officials announced Police Chief Jason Salazar was sworn into the position this week. He is the 60th president of the police advocacy organization and will serve for 1 year. Salazar says as part of his new role, he'll advocate for public safety and help strengthen law enforcement agencies across the state. Salazar has been the chief of police in Visalia since 2015. Officials with Valley Children's Healthcare tell our news partner Fresno Land the annual Kids Day fundraiser is paused for this year. A spokeswoman said hospital leaders were reevaluating the fundraising effort. It involves volunteers selling newspapers on street corners. The change comes nearly a year after the hospital received considerable public scrutiny over its CEO's salary of more than $5 million. The Kids Day fundraiser typically raises $500,000 for the hospital. Californians will be able to witness a total lunar eclipse tonight. A partial lunar eclipse will be visible starting just after 10 p.m. and reach totality by around 11:30. After that, it'll start to taper off until it's no longer visible around 2 a.m. on Friday. The event is safe to view without any special equipment. This event happens when the moon moves into the Earth's shadow. It can also make the moon appear red, which is why it's sometimes called a blood moon. Kyle Waters is the coordinator of Sacramento State's planetarium.
Much like a sunset looks red, even though the sun is not actually red, that's because of all the Earth's atmosphere that light has to travel through. And so the same physics is happening here. The only light that will make it to the moon is light that's traveled through the Earth's atmosphere. So predominantly red light is what makes it through.
He says stormy weather makes the lunar eclipse difficult to see, but if there's a break in cloud cover, it should still be visible.
KVPR's vehicle donation program brings in thousands of dollars each month to support the news and information you rely on. If you've got a car, truck, motorcycle, or boat you're no longer using, please consider donating it. The process is easy. We'll tow it away free of charge, KVPR gets a check, and you'll get a receipt for your taxes. Find out more at kvpr.org/cars or call 855-277-2346.
And now to our main story. Dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion is a hallmark of President Trump's second term as president. Those efforts have raised questions about protections for people who may be vulnerable to discrimination. That includes the nation's transgender and non-binary population. Today, if you're filling out a federal form, like a passport application, you'll only find two genders listed, male and female. So where do actions like these leave trans and non-binary people? Marika Rowland is a reporter with The Intersection and our news partner, the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. She recently spoke with trans people living in the San Joaquin Valley to find out. Her recent reporting has tried to understand how sweeping federal policy changes are impacting trans people's everyday lives. Marika starts out our conversation by laying out some of the wide-ranging actions the Trump administration has taken in just the last couple of months.
On day one, on his return to the White House, Donald Trump signed an executive order saying the federal government will only recognize two sexes, male and female, which cannot be changed, which essentially erases trans people. He's also stripped federal websites of mentions of transgender people, using only the LGB acronyms and taking off the T. That includes removing trans people from the Stonewall National Monument, the first U.S. monument dedicated to LGBTQ plus people in the rights movement. He's banned gender-affirming care in minors, threatened hospitals and medical providers by cutting off funding if they provide gender-affirming care, in addition to banning trans people from participating in school sports and serving in the military. And of course, he's also gone after diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, which include LGBTQ plus people, as well as people of color, disabled people, and more. Here's June Sparrow from Mo Pride, a LGBTQ plus resource center in Modesto, speaking about the environment for trans people.
It's definitely frightening right now to be a part of the trans and non-binary community. We are definitely under attack. Our rights are being stripped from us at an alarming rate.
This surprised me, Marika. You write that the number of people asking for help with changing their name or gender has doubled since the start of the year at Cal Pride, which runs several LGBTQ plus centers in the Valley. Why is that?
I think the surge in applications is a direct response to Trump's reelection. He imposed some anti-LGBTQ plus policies during his first term, but he explicitly campaigned with anti-trans rhetoric this time around. So many in the community saw this coming and have been trying to get official recognition and changes as a result.
Because of those changes, you mentioned certain documents like updating your passport. Now you'll only see a male or female option when filling out your gender. You report that having official documents that don't match your gender identity can create a lot of fear, and there are consequences for people. Could you elaborate on that?
I spoke with Dakota Blaze, who's a trans man who lives in Stockton and works for the Central Valley Gender Health and Wellness, about what can happen when people's paperwork do not match their identities.
And as much as a trans person would prefer to pass in community, having those two markers not match, it's just like a target on your back. Mm-hmm.
So having official documentation that doesn't match your identity and how you look can be problematic really for anyone. People may not believe who you are. People may not think your documents are valid. For trans and other gender nonconforming people, it can essentially out them to people who may not know they are trans. And that can create an unsafe environment depending on where they are and who they're with. A simple example of this is from Simone Reyes, who's the founder of Stockton Central Valley Gender Health and Wellness. She didn't change her name and other official documents when she first transitioned more than 30 years ago. But she did decide to do that in part because while using her credit card at restaurants, waitresses would sometimes tell her, "Ma'am, you can't use this card without your husband present," because her given name did not match her gender identity.
Now, California is known as a progressive state and probably a safe haven for a lot of people in the trans community. But how are these federal changes impacting that sense of safety, especially here in the Valley?
Definitely. So even if a person's city, a county, or the state is supportive of LGBTQ plus rights, and especially trans identities, the federal government touches so many parts of their lives, everything from passports, Social Security, there are so many aspects. Also, having directives come directly from the White House that essentially erase trans existence really sets a tone that is hostile to their everyday lives.
I was surprised to read that incidents of gender and sexual orientation-related hate crimes were up. That was in your report. I would think some people might be able to argue that we are having more transparent conversations than ever about the trans community. There have been many celebrities who've championed this effort. So what's that data signal to you that even amid this time where we're speaking more openly about the trans community, that they're still suffering in this way?
I think socially and on a larger scale, acceptance and inclusion of trans people has improved vastly, of course, from the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s. I think because the trans and non-binary community is so very small, surveys have shown that it's just maybe 1% of the population, it is still easy to caricature and scapegoat them. For example, the NCAA president estimated last December that there are fewer than 10 college athletes who are trans, which, interestingly, is less than the number of children that Elon Musk has fathered. So it's just an incredibly small population to have this much attention and resources focused on them from the federal government.
And what resources are available to people in the LGBTQ plus community during a time like this? And are those resources being threatened at all by all these federal funding cuts we've been hearing about?
Yeah, well, all of the leaders of the centers across the Valley say that at least a portion of their funding is in jeopardy right now. Most of them rely on grants, which filter to the county and state, and some of them have federal sources. So in speaking with these groups, Mo Pride, which operates in Modesto, said maybe about $15,000 of their $75,000 annual budget could be in jeopardy. And Cow Pride, which is a larger organization and has centers in Modesto, Sonora, and Merced, said maybe about $30K of their $1.3 million budget has federal origins. So there's definitely some repercussions other than just the anti-trans policies and anti-inclusive policies for these groups. Roman Scanlon, the executive director of Cal Pride Stanislaus, said he is constantly checking for new anti-LGBTQ plus policies from the administration.
Every hour on the hour, we have to check to see if there's anything else that's been signed or done, just to see what's next.
And what are the immediate concerns, Marika, or next steps for these nonprofit organizations you've spoken with? Like, where's their focus moving forward?
They're really focused on letting the community know that they're open, that they can provide free services from peer and group support to health and STI testing. They offer harm reduction for substance abuse treatment. They offer gender-affirming care clinics. Many of them have closets for gender-affirming care for clothes if you need that. They all also have open office hours where you can just walk in, say what you need, and they can hook you up with services. Or if you're being harassed, they can also help you contact law enforcement if you want, or find other resources to help you.
Marika Rowland, reporter with The Intersection and our news partner, the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. Thanks so much for this reporting.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.